about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a TEDx speaker, personal transformation coach, as well as an author too, and the author of the new book, Conscious Love. No other than Mr. Christian De La Huerta.
Thank you for the introduction, Daniel. Glad to be here with you having this conversation.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Christian. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Well, I was born in Cuba during the revolution, so I lived in the communist country for the first 10 years of my life, came to the US with my family when I was 10. And, I've been here since then. This is actually my third book. I've been doing this coaching, retreats, workshops for the last over 30 years now. And the theme between all the books is transformation, a deepening of identity, like asking ourselves the question, who are we really? Um, and the second book, the previous one to this, is more about power, like figuring out our relationship to power, because a lot of us have a conflicted relationship to it. This one is about love and how to do relationships consciously.
Mr. Christian De La Huerta, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom today. Can you start by defining what you mean by conscious love? How does it fundamentally differ from conventional ideas or romantic love?
Conscious love, it's a deeper kind of love. It's an authentic kind of love that doesn't come from a place of neediness, a place of possessiveness, or a place of projection. We're projecting our image of ourselves or our expectations on somebody else. It's the kind of love that requires courage because it entails a deep sense of who we are. And that entails having the courage to face ourselves, including asking ourselves the hard questions about our unhealed wounds, what makes us do the things we do, our patterns, so that we can cut through all that BS and get to the authentic self that lies underneath all that stuff. And so that we can meet then each other from a place of wholeness, not a place of emptiness or feeling like, approaching like, you are going to make me happy, you are going to complete me, right? Both parties approach that relationship as healed whole human beings.
Very well said, Mr. Christian. Very well said. And what experiences or societal shift led you to write this book now? What felt missing in the conversation about relationships?
Well, like I said, I've been doing coaching, like personal transformation coaching and working with couples for over 30 years. And it's still the area that I find most people struggle with. Like, show me one person who doesn't struggle with this area of relationships. So then I started asking myself, why is that? Why do we struggle so much with relationships? And then that's what this book is about. I identify and name and some of the challenges, 10 challenges in specific that get us in trouble in relationships, and talk about how to navigate those, how to get through those.
Very well said, Mr. Christian. Very well said. The subtitle talks about transforming our relationship to relationships. What does this shift in perspective entail, and how do we relate to idea of relationships differently?
Yeah, well, that is one of the 10 challenges, that we approach relationships with completely unrealistic expectations. Like if we're approaching a relationship like I was talking about with that expectation that it's going to make us happy, that it's going to solve our problems. If I could only have that one, then I would be happy. It's like, forget it. Not going to happen. There isn't anybody out there who's going to make us happy, and it's not their job to. So it's really unfair to put that responsibility on someone else and put the weight of that responsibility on the relationship itself. We also approach relationships with, most often from a place of not feeling completely good about ourselves. So we end up settling, right? Because we're so afraid of being alone, we resist and run away from that wanting to be alone, that we end up settling, and we overlook yellow flags and red flags, um, and just for that desire to be with somebody, even if we know deep down inside that it's probably not going to work. Or maybe the sex is really good, but we can tell that there's not a lot of compatibility in other areas of life, but we override those feelings, or sometimes it's more than feelings. Sometimes we override that deep sense of knowing. Um, and that's another reason why we end up getting in trouble in relationships. We also confuse the feeling of love with the actual act of loving. We confuse infatuation and that feeling of being in love, which, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the best feelings in life. But it's an illusion, right? Scott Peck has given us great wisdom about this in his book, The Road Less Traveled. And basically, this is it, in my own words. The first part of the relationship is what we tend to call the honeymoon, right? Which is 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe nine, if we haven't moved in together yet. Because at some point, when we do move in together, and during the honeymoon, is like we see that other person through rose-colored glasses. They can do no wrong, right? Everything is great. We're in love with them until they squeeze the toothpaste from the wrong end, or they put the roll of toilet paper in the wrong way, which everybody should know that this is the right way. Um, and then that's it, right? Those ego boundaries come back up. We start feeling separate then, and then they can do nothing right from there on. So then we abandon that relationship in search of greener pastures, looking for the one. um, but Scott Peck says is that the end of the honeymoon is when the work of real loving begins. And because the illusion is now over, and instead of bailing and jumping out of the relationship, that's when the work of the relationship really begins to happen. And unfortunately, it's like most of us don't give it that kind of time.
Mr. Christians, you emphasize conscious love as a practice. What are the core pillars or foundational skills required to cultivate it?
Well, the first thing is presence and awareness. Right? We can't do anything about what we're not aware of. So any practice that we can develop to become aware of who we are, our preferences, our desires, what makes us do the things we do, our patterns, that's really important work. It's not fun work because it requires going within and facing parts of ourselves that in some cases we spend a lot of time running away from. But it is so worthwhile because if we're willing to do that kind of work, our relationships actually have a chance. Because otherwise, what ends up happening is that we end up projecting on one another all our mommy stuff and daddy stuff, all our unresolved issues from the past, our betrayal issues. If one of our exes, or probably a series of exes, left us or cheated on us or betrayed us in some ways, and we haven't worked through that and faced that and own that and asked the hard questions about that, we're going to approach the relationship, the next one, like very protected and with our heart closed. So we're really not going to give it a chance. Um, So that's the importance of doing all this work. And again, any kind of practice that we can do, anything that we can do to deepen our self-awareness, you know, working with a coach, going to therapy, it's good to do that kind of stuff because we all have blind spots. So it's good to have credible, clear mirrors who don't have a vested interest, right? Who are going to mirror to us our highest good, and what's going to help us have the kind of lives and relationships that we long for. It's harder to do with a friend or with our own partners because we're more intertwined with them, and there's more personal history with them. So that is one thing we can do. I definitely recommend for people to read my book because it's very clear and it walks you by the hand through each of these challenges. The other thing that I think it's really important to learn, which I reference it in this book for sure, but there's a lot more about it in the previous book on power, Awakening the Soul of Power, is understanding what the ego mind is. And it's a lot of confusion in the world about what the ego is. Most of us who know the word will think arrogance, inflated sense of self, and it is that, but it's a lot more than that. And so we don't have time to get into what the ego is here in the show, but here's a great visual. If you put a baseball in the center of the stadium, that's what the ego is. And the word ego in Latin means I. So ego is that superficial sense of identity of separate personality. This is Christian, that's Daniel over there. In both ways, in some ways it's an illusion, and it's a very helpful illusion, and in some ways it's the source of all our problems, because it's in the ego that our sense of separation comes from, our abandonment issues. um, the ego is very defensive. The ego has a need to be right all the time. The ego is really good about projecting our own stuff onto other people, and it has a really hard time seeing our own crap. So that's why it really gets in the way of relationships. That's the reason we get stuck in power struggles or into arguments. And one of the reasons why sometimes it feels like the same boring play with the same boring movie, only with a different actor. It's the same old crap, the same old unresolved arguments that we keep having over and over again, sometimes with the same person, sometimes with different actors. And so to me, the only way out is to go in, is to go within and to ask ourselves those hard questions that we were talking about. Who are we? And why do we do the things we do? What makes us do the things we do?
Very well said, Mr. Christian. Beautifully articulated. And as a TEDx speaker, personal transformation coach, as well as an author, what are your short term and long term goals?
Well, this book just came out a couple of weeks ago. So short-term goals is to get the word out, let people know that it's out there. Um, because I know that this book can make a real difference in real human lives. But there's so many hundreds of thousands of books available on Amazon, for example, that you gotta let people know about it. So that's why I'm doing podcasts and writing articles and speaking at bookstores. Um, at least for the for the foreseeable future, at least through the summer, probably through the end of the year. Um, in terms of longer term, I will still continue to do my coaching. I have, I work both with individuals. I have a group that is an annual group that starts and ends at the same time. And it's a year of transformation. It sounds like a lot, but it's not that much, right? They have a little bit of reading to do each week from this book and from the previous book. And then we meet on Zoom every other week, every 2 weeks for a couple of hours. And it's really valuable because by stretching the teachings over the course of a year, people get to go through their lives and apply them in real time. So they're having stuff comes up, an argument comes up. conflict comes up at home, in a relationship, at work, they get to bring that stuff and discuss it, and we apply the teachings directly to whatever's going on in their lives. So it really becomes an invaluable experience.
Invaluable indeed. And good luck to your goals, Mr. Christian, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
You got to do your work, right? You got to do your work. Um, I know self-doubt. I know self-hatred. My adolescence was one long depression. And if you and I was so painfully shy as a teenager to do a podcast, even though they weren't around then, but to speak in public, it was just not going to happen. I wasn't ready for that. So flash forward to today, I've spoken all over the world. I've spoken in front of thousands of people. I've done like 150 podcast interviews at this point, and so that I know that all that stuff, all those wounds from childhood, those misunderstandings, the stuff that we pick up along the way, the conclusions that we make about ourselves because we misheard something or somebody said something to us the wrong way or in a moment of overwhelm, all that stuff can be healed and it can be cleared and it can be transcended. And so I know if that can happen in me, it can happen in anybody. And yeah, it takes a little bit of work. Or actually, to be honest, it takes a lot of work. You got to go within, and you gotta do your work. There's no way around it.
Definitely. And Mr. Christian, can you recommend a book that influenced your journey?
Yes, it's one of my favorite books. It's short. It's in Socratic dialogues, teacher and student having a conversation. It's called "The Universe is a Green Dragon," and it's written by Brian Swim, who's a physicist, a cosmologist, and what he's done is apply some of the principles that govern the stars, that rule the cosmos, to the human experience. Because much to the surprise of some humans, we're also part of the cosmos, so we're ruled by some of the same principles that govern the stars. So, for example, he talks about cosmic generosity. Like, what a beautiful concept. He talks about the generosity of a supernova. When a supernova explodes and it gives up its life, it gives up its form, what happens as a result of that? Suns and moons and planets, life occurs because of that. And he talks about how humans, we are made, like 99% of the stuff in our bodies, the atoms in our body, are identical to the atoms that are found in the stars. We're made literally of star stuff, so that we can literally say, not just poetically, this isn't a new agey thing, this is science, that we are star beings because of that. We are made of star stuff. And so, he says, that means that we too have that cosmic generosity hardwired into us. That we have that desire innately, inherently, to give ourselves away. And what a beautiful thing that is, whether you're applying that to your life purpose and what are you going to do with your life, or apply it to lovemaking. Rather than approaching lovemaking is like, I want to get off. Um, if you approach it with that sense of giving yourself away, and not in a doormatty way, of course, in a way that's balanced and equal, and allowing that energy, that giving and receiving energy, to flow from one person to the next. And when you're in the more active role, you are playing that other body as if it was an exquisite Stradivarius violin. Um, and when the energy flows back in your direction, it's your turn to receive. Then give yourself away and allow yourself to really receive the pleasure, the love that the other person has given you.
Yes, people, we are connected. The interconnected of the universe indeed. Why did you choose the specific phrase conscious love, the powerful idea of transforming our relationship to relationships?
Well, because I've, in my work on relationships, I do a weekend retreat focused on relationships. That's one of the first premises. What does it mean to approach love consciously, to approach a relationship consciously? And so, to what we were talking about earlier, if you're approaching the relationship seeking for fulfillment or validation or happiness from it, forget it. Not the reason, right? Those are not gonna work ultimately, or we're gonna end up settling. And then if you're gonna do them consciously, meaning that we know that the other person is not responsible for our happiness, we know that we are responsible for our happiness. And these are teachings from Ram Dass, the spiritual teacher. So he says that if you're going to do it consciously, there's three levels of relationships. Level one, the other person doesn't want to play at that level. They're not interested in the spiritual stuff. But enough works, right? Maybe you live well together, you have fun together, it's intellectually stimulating, you laugh together, you share interests, love making is great. Maybe you co-parent well together. There's enough of it that works that we say, okay, that's pretty good, and then we can reclaim all the time, all the energy, all the effort, all the resources that we would otherwise spending looking for the one, and we dedicate that to our own growth. Level three is where both beings are already fully realized, fully aware of their sacred essence, of our God essence, and then the relationship becomes this sacred dance of mirroring that and enjoying that with each other. I don't think we need to worry about that one yet. Level two, that's the one we're interested in. It's the one where both parties are now interested and committed to using the relationship, the container of the relationship, to speed up their own and their partner's process of growth and healing and transformation. So rather than saying, for example, there's an argument and they say something that hurts me, rather than hurting them back, which is what we normally do, and then we get stuck in a power struggle or battle of the egos. You know, bam, 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 bam. You said this, I said that, until one of us explodes. So rather than reacting and then regretting what we said or did, because the adrenaline's going to dissipate. And then in 10 minutes, half an hour, we're going to, God, I can't believe I said that. That was so mean and hurtful. And it's not really what I meant to say or wanted to say. So rather than reacting and regretting, we feel the ouch of whatever happened, what they did or said, and we ask ourselves the question, right? We use that as an opportunity for growth. So rather than reacting and hurting them back again, we say, wow, what was it about that hurts? Or let me look for patterns. This is not the first time I've had this argument with this person or with similar people in similar situations. So what is that? Why do I keep attracting this kind of person that keeps behaving in this way, right? Whether it's showing up late or cheating, right? Anything. Why do I keep getting stuck in these patterns? Because if we get really honest, there is one common denominator in every one of those arguments, in every one of those relationships, and it's right here. And it doesn't exonerate whatever they did or didn't do. But if we want to be free, if we want to heal these subconscious patterns, we got to look within.
Mr. Christian, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please to listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, Law 101 and mental health 101. Love Letters in third season, and my movie 101 review and music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Mr. Christian, if someone reading this feels inspired but overwhelmed, what is one simple, concrete practice you would recommend they start with today to begin cultivating conscious love in their own life?
Well, like I said, presence, awareness, and use your breath. Right? That you start feeling upset or you start feeling like you're headed in the direction of an argument. And we all know what that feels like, right? We all know the steps that happens, right? We get our, our heart starts going faster. We start feeling protective, defensive. Our hands get sweaty. We get flushed. Um, our breathing gets shorter, right? That's the moment of choice, right? When before we go over the waterfall and then do something that we're gonna or say something that we're gonna regret after the adrenaline dissipates. And the
Yes.
way to cut through that is use your breath, right? There's swamis in India that have that much control over their body that they can tell their heart to slow down, and the heart slows down. Most of us are never gonna have that kind of control over the body, but anybody can slow down the breath. Anybody can do that. It's just a question of awareness and choice. When we slow down the breath, the heart has no choice. The heart has to slow down, and as that happens, the body begins to relax, the nervous system begins to quiet down, and we can make a choice about how we show up in that situation rather than just react from out of control brain biochemistry.
Mr. Christian De La Huerta, thank you so much for sharing your conscious love to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support all your books, your advocacy, as well as your coaching itself?
Thank you, Daniel. Really grateful to be here and appreciated your questions.
Yes, and where do people can buy your book, Mr. Christian?
The book is available on Amazon, or they can get it through my website, or they can order it at their local bookstore if they want to support their bookstore.
Yes, yes. How about your coaching, Mr. Christian?
The website, and that's soulfulpower.com, SOULFULPOWER, power.com.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Christian De La Huerta because if you support him, more and more and more empowering books to come, more and more empowering advocacy for sure to come, and for sure more and more empowering coaching to come. So, Mr. Christian, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
More to come, people. See you soon.